There are violations of privacy, and then there is this. My mother-in-law installed a hidden camera in my baby's nursery without telling us, and we discovered it because my husband noticed a small red light blinking behind a shelf of stuffed animals at 2 in the morning. We found the camera. We found the Wi-Fi transmitter attached to the back of it. We found that it had been streaming live to her phone for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of footage of me feeding my daughter at 3 in the morning. 6 weeks of footage of my husband changing diapers and singing off-key lullabies. 6 weeks of my family's most private moments. The ones that happen in the dark when you think no one is watching, being broadcast to a woman who had told us she just wanted to be more involved. My name is Jess. I am 31. My husband Tyler is 33. Our daughter Harper is now 8 months old and sleeps through the night in a nursery that I have swept for devices 3 times since we found the camera. I check it now the way some people check door locks. Twice before bed. Always. That is what one act of surveillance does to a person. It rewires
It's
something
important to
in
cherish
you
these
that
moments.
does not
They pass
fully
so
rewire
quickly,
back.
and the memories we make are all
Let
we
me
truly
tell
carry
you
with
how we
us.
got here. Tyler's mother is named Diane. She is 60 years old, recently divorced, and lives alone in a house 20 minutes from us that has 4 bedrooms and 2 cats and no one else in it. When Tyler and I got together 6 years ago, Diane was warm and generous, and I genuinely liked her. She was funny in a dry way, and she remembered details about things you had mentioned in passing, and she sent cards for every birthday, including mine. I thought I was lucky. I thought Tyler's family was one of the uncomplicated ones. The first sign that Diane was not going to handle my pregnancy well came at our announcement dinner. We had everyone over. My parents, Tyler's mother, his uncle and aunt. We did the cake reveal with a pink interior and everyone cheered and Diane cried, and then she turned to Tyler and said, "Now you really need me. Not now we are going to be so happy, or how wonderful. Now you really need me." Tyler laughed it off. I noticed it and filed it away. By month 6 of the pregnancy, Diane was calling Tyler every day and dropping by with things we had not asked for. Nursing pillows. Swaddle blankets in colors I had not chosen. A sound machine she had already programmed with ocean sounds because she read that ocean sounds were the best for infant sleep. Each thing came with a small speech about why her choice was better than whatever we might have picked ourselves. Tyler always thanked her. I always thanked her. Neither of us said what we were thinking, which was, please let us make our own decisions about our own baby. When Harper was born, Diane was in the waiting room before I was even fully dilated. She had brought a casserole. Not for after. For during. She left it at the nurse's station and told them to make sure Tyler ate something. A nurse came in during active labor and offered Tyler a chicken casserole from a woman in the waiting room, and we both started laughing. And I think that was the last genuinely uncomplicated moment I had in relation to Diane. After Harper came home, Diane's visits started at 3 times a week, and within a month they were daily. Not long visits. Just appearances. She would show up around 10 with coffee and a reason, and stay for 90 minutes and then leave. Each time she would ask if she could put Harper down for her nap. Each time I would say, "No, thank you, I have a routine." Each time, Diane would say, of course, and then suggest a small modification to my routine that would make nap time easier if I would just try it. I never tried it. My routine worked. My baby slept. Diane watched this with an expression I had learned to read as professional disappointment. She thought I was doing it wrong. She had raised Tyler, and therefore knew more about babies than I did. She never said this directly. She said it in sighs and silences and the specific way she held Harper that communicated, "I know what I am doing, even when you do not hand her to me." At 8 weeks we established a visiting schedule. Tuesdays and Saturdays, 2 hours each visit. Diane was unhappy about this but accepted it. What she could not accept was the nursery. We had a beautiful nursery. Pale green walls, white crib, a bookshelf Tyler had built, and a strict policy of no visitors during sleep time, because Harper was a light sleeper, and we had worked hard to establish her routine. Diane had asked 3 times to watch Harper sleep. 3 times I had said no. She sleeps best undisturbed. Diane said she just wanted to peek. I said the routine was fragile and we were sticking to it. She said she had raised a baby and knew what fragile routines felt like. I said I was glad and we were still sticking to ours. She stopped asking. What she did instead I did not find out about for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. At week 4, Tyler had mentioned to his mother that the baby monitor we had was giving us grainy footage at night, and we were thinking of upgrading. He was just talking, making conversation. Diane listened and said she might have a solution, and the next time she visited she brought a small device she said was a Wi-Fi signal booster for better video quality. She said she had read about it online and thought it might help. She offered to set it up. Tyler said sure and showed her the nursery. She spent 15 minutes in there and came out and said all done and handed Tyler a pamphlet for the device. He thanked her. We never thought about it again. Until the blinking red light. Tyler saw it at 2:15 in the morning when he got up to check on Harper after she made a small sound. He leaned into the crib and noticed the light behind the stuffed animal shelf. He thought it was the nightlight on a different setting. Then he looked more carefully. He came back to the bedroom and woke me up. He said, "Jess, I need to show you something," and his voice had a quality in it I had never heard before. We went to the nursery together. He moved the stuffed animals. Behind them, flush with the back of the shelf, was a small black camera no bigger than a large coin. It had a lens, an indicator light, and a thin wire running down the back of the shelf to a small box plugged into the outlet behind the furniture. Tyler pulled everything out. He turned the camera over in his hands. He found a brand name on the back. He Googled it at 2:30 in the morning, while I sat on the nursery floor holding Harper, who had woken up and could not understand why her parents were dismantling her shelf. What he found was that the device was a home surveillance camera with cloud streaming capability. It streamed live to an app and stored footage in a cloud account, linked to the registered email address. The registered email address was his mother's. Tyler put the camera on the dresser and sat next to me on the floor, and we stayed there for a while not saying anything. Harper fell back asleep between us. Finally, Tyler said, "When did she even have the opportunity?" Then we both remembered. The Wi-Fi signal booster. 15 minutes in the nursery, setting up a device. We had stood outside the door and she had been in there alone for 15 minutes and she had planted a camera and covered it with a stuffed owl and walked out and handed Tyler a pamphlet for a Wi-Fi device that did not exist and gone home and watched us for 6 weeks. I felt something happen in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something more total than anger. A kind of collapse of the version of reality I had been living in, where Diane was difficult, but fundamentally trustworthy. She had watched us. Every night feeding. Every 3 a.m. stumble to the crib. Every moment of early parenthood that belongs only to you and your partner and your child. She had watched all of it through a camera she had hidden in a stuffed owl. Tyler called his mother at 7 that morning. He did not tell me he was going to call. I woke up and he was in the kitchen, and his face was white, and his voice was very quiet and controlled. When I walked in, he had her on speaker. He said, "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She said, "Of course." He said, "Did you put a camera in Harper's nursery?" There was a pause. Then she said, "I was worried about her." Tyler said, "That is not what I asked." She said, "I just wanted to see that she was okay at night. I was not sleeping worrying about her." Tyler said, "So you installed a hidden camera in our daughter's room and watched us for 6 weeks without telling us?" Diane started crying. She said she had not thought of it as hidden. She had thought of it as helping. Tyler said, "You told me it was a Wi-Fi booster." Diane said she had not wanted to make a big deal of it. Tyler said, "You lied to me. You entered our daughter's room and put surveillance equipment in it without our knowledge or permission. And then you watched us. That is not helping. Diane said she was not a spy, she was a grandmother. Tyler said, I need you to delete the footage and delete the app. And I will be coming to your house today to retrieve the camera and the transmitter. And if there is any other device in this house, I need you to tell me now. Diane sobbed and said she had only ever wanted what was best for Harper. Tyler said, I will see you at noon, and hung up. We called a lawyer before noon. Our lawyer, Ms. Torres, specialized in privacy and family law, and she had a very clear answer to our first question, which was whether what Diane had done was illegal. She said in our state, installing recording equipment in someone's home without consent was a criminal offense. She said streaming footage of a breastfeeding mother and a child could constitute voyeurism depending on interpretation. She said we had options ranging from a strongly worded cease and desist to a criminal complaint. She asked what we wanted to achieve. Tyler said he wanted his mother to understand the severity of what she had done, and he wanted absolute certainty it could never happen again. Ms. Torres said she could draft a letter that outlined the legal exposure Diane faced and required her to confirm in writing that all footage had been deleted, that no other devices existed, and that she would never install any monitoring equipment in our home or on our property or at our child's daycare or school without explicit written consent from both parents. She said the letter would make clear that any future violation would result in a criminal complaint and a restraining order application. We said yes. Tyler drove to his mother's house. He took the camera and the transmitter. He sat across from Diane while she cried and said she had only been trying to feel close to Harper. Tyler said there were other ways to feel close to Harper, and none of them involved deception. He asked if there were other devices. She said no. He asked twice more. She said no both times. He looked around the house anyway. He did not find anything. He left with the camera and the transmitter, and a feeling he described to me later as grief. Not rage. Grief. He said it felt like mourning someone who was still alive. Diane received the lawyer's letter 4 days later. She responded through her own lawyer, who sent a letter acknowledging the installation of the device, confirming deletion of all footage, confirming no other devices, and agreeing to the terms. Her lawyer added a note saying Diane had been motivated by concern for her grandchild and had not understood the legal implications. Miss Torres wrote back a single line. Ignorance of the law is not a legal defense. The agreement was signed. We changed all our door codes. We swept the house with a radio frequency detector Tyler bought online. We found nothing else. We told the daycare and asked them to add a note to Harper's file that no visitor was permitted to leave any item in the building, including gifts, without staff inspection. The daycare director did not ask why. She just said, of course. We established new rules for Diane. All visits supervised, meaning Tyler or I was present in the same room at all times. No gifts that contained electronics of any kind. Any item she brought to our home was subject to inspection before use. She agreed to all of it in writing. She cried in every conversation we had for the following month. Not manipulative crying, or at least it did not feel manipulative. It felt like the specific despair of someone who had done something genuinely terrible and was only now understanding the weight of it. 3 months later, we allowed supervised visits to resume. Diane comes every other Saturday. She sits in the living room and plays with Harper on the floor, and does not ask to go to any other room in the house. She knows the rules. She follows them. She has not once in 3 months asked to be alone with Harper. She has not brought any electronic items. She brings food and books and a foam alphabet map that Tyler inspected piece by piece before it went on the floor. Something between us is permanently changed. I watch her hands when she is in our home. I watch where she looks. I notice when her eyes move toward the hallway, toward the nursery. She has never gone there. But I notice when she looks. That noticing will probably never go away completely. That is the cost of what she did. Not the camera itself, but the rewiring. The way it changed how I move through my own home. The way I check the nursery before I put Harper down now. Every single time. The way I scan new rooms when I visit other people. The hypervigilance that arrived on the night Tyler found the blinking red light, and has not fully left since. We are living with it. We are building something with Diane that is smaller and more supervised than what she wanted and more than she deserves given what she did. But Harper's Tyler's mother's granddaughter, and that is a fact that will not change. And I'm not willing to make that fact an absence in Harper's life if there is a safe way to make it a presence. For now there is a safe way. For now Diane is following the rules. I keep the lawyer's number in my favorites. I keep the detector in the nightstand. I keep my eyes open. And every night when I check the nursery before bed, I touch the bookshelf where the stuffed owl used to sit, and I remind myself that I found it. I caught it. I handled it. And my daughter is safe. That is the whole story. Here is my question for you. If you found a hidden camera in your baby's nursery installed by your mother-in-law, would you call the police immediately or handle it privately the way we did? In TAYTAES at Chana, I want to know what you would have done, because I have asked myself that question 100 times since that night, and I still do not have a clean answer. What I left out of the main story is what happened in the 6 weeks before we found the camera, when the footage was already being recorded and we had no idea. Looking back, there were 2 moments that should have told me something was wrong, but that I interpreted as Diane simply being more informed than usual. The first was at week 3. Harper had developed a mild rash on her left cheek, and we had seen the pediatrician who said it was contact dermatitis, nothing serious, and recommended switching to a different laundry detergent for her bedding. We had not told anyone about the rash. It was minor, handled, done. 3 days after the appointment, Diane arrived for her Saturday visit, and said before she even sat down that she had read about contact dermatitis and wanted to share an article about fabric softeners being a hidden trigger. I looked at her and said, "How did you know about the rash?" She said Tyler had mentioned it. I looked at Tyler. He shook his head very slightly. He had not mentioned it. I let it go in the moment. I told myself maybe she had seen it on his face when we were changing Harper. Maybe someone at the pediatrician's office. But it sat in the back of my mind like a splinter. The second moment was at week 5. Tyler had started singing a specific song to Harper at bedtime. It was not a nursery rhyme or anything with words really. Just a melody he made up one night when she was fussy. And it had worked and he had kept using it. It was entirely private. Something that existed only in that room at those hours. One Sunday, Diane was over for lunch, and she had Harper on her knee. And she started humming. The same melody. Exactly the same. I stopped moving. I said, "Diane, where did you learn that?" She said, "Oh, I heard Tyler humming it once." Tyler had never hummed it anywhere, but the nursery. He had no memory of humming it in front of his mother. We looked at each other, and something passed between us that neither of us named yet. 3 days later, Tyler found the camera. Now I could name it. She had heard Tyler's lullaby through the camera. She had absorbed it without thinking about what it meant. That she was absorbing something private. Something that belonged to us. She had heard it so many times over the streaming audio that she had memorized it. And then she had sat with our daughter on her knee and hummed it like a grandmother. Like she had always known it. Like it belonged to her. I told this part to Ms. Torres when we were drafting the legal strategy. Ms. Torres was quiet for a moment, and then she said that detail is actually significant. She said it demonstrated that Diane had been actively watching and listening to the footage in real time, that she had engaged with it intimately, that she had internalized content from the surveillance. She said it was not a passive camera installed and forgotten. It was an active intrusion. She used that word. Intrusion. I wrote it down. I still have the note. I told this part to my therapist too. Dhar. She said there is something worth naming here, which is that Diane's behavior contains a specific kind of hunger, the kind that comes from someone who does not experience boundaries as real. To her, the nursery was not a place with a door and a rule. It was a place where her grandchild was. And she believed her love gave her the right to be wherever her grandchild was, at all times, in all ways. She could not feel the wrongness of it, because she had dissolved the boundary in her own mind before she ever planted the camera. Dr. Ann said this is important not as an excuse but as a map. If you understand the shape of the hunger, you can see it coming in other forms. You can catch it earlier. You can name it before it becomes a hidden camera. You can say, I see you wanting to dissolve this boundary, and that is not allowed. I have been trying to do that since. Naming the shape before it becomes an act. Watching for the moment when Diane's eyes go soft in a particular way. When she asks a question that is slightly too informed. When she volunteers a detail she should not have. I have not caught anything since the camera. Either she has genuinely changed or she has become more careful. I cannot know for certain. What I know is that I am watching. Not with fear exactly. With the kind of alert attention that lives just below the surface now. Permanent and quiet. The cost of being deceived by someone I trusted in the room where my daughter sleeps. The camera is in a box in our garage. We kept it as evidence on Ms. Torres's advice. In the unlikely event Diane ever claims the agreement was coerced, or that we misrepresented what happened, we have the physical device. We have the cloud account registration showing her email. We have the timeline of streaming activity. We have the lawyer's signed agreement. We have everything. That is what keeping receipts looks like. When someone plants a camera in your nursery, you keep the camera. You keep every record. You never assume it is over just because they sign the paper. You stay ready. You stay watching. You protect your child from the dark, and you protect them from the hunger that sometimes wears the face of love. Harper will never know any of this happened. One day when she is much older, I will tell her that her grandmother loved her in a way that was sometimes too large for the container of it, and that her parents had to build a stronger container. I will not make Diane a monster in that story, but I will not hide what she did either. Harper deserves to know what boundaries are and why they matter, and that the people who love us most are sometimes the people we most need to say no to. She will learn that from us, from the way we live, from the way we hold our lines with love and without apology, and from the story of the camera behind the stuffed owl on the shelf in the room where she slept. There is one more piece I want to share because it speaks to something broader than our specific story. After we discovered the camera, I joined an online community for parents dealing with boundary violations from extended family. I did not share our story immediately. I just read. And what I found was that our experience, while extreme in form, was not extreme in pattern. Camera placement. Using gifted devices to spy. Showing up with electronics that turned out to have secondary functions. Accessing cloud accounts linked to baby monitors. Finding ways to be present in spaces where physical presence had been denied. Story after story. Different names. Different devices. Same hunger. Same dissolution of the boundary between watching and belonging. I am sharing this not to frighten anyone, but because I want parents reading this to know what to look for. If someone in your life offers to help set up a device and wants to be alone in the room while they do it, stay in the room. If someone mentions details about your baby's nighttime routine that they should not know, ask yourself how they know. If a gifted device has a brand name you do not recognize, Google it before you plug it in. Inspect gifts from people with a history of overstep, not because everyone is Diane, but because Diane thought she was helping and convinced herself the deception was justified by the love, and that combination is more common than we want to believe. You do not have to be paranoid. You have to be informed. There is a difference. Informed is looking at the blinking light and understanding what it means. Informed is naming the lullaby moment and following it to its source. Informed is knowing that your home is yours. Your nursery is yours. Your child's first months are yours, and no amount of love entitles anyone to surveil them. Not a parent, not a sibling, not a grandmother, no one. Trust is not surveillance. Love is not watching without permission. And anyone who tells you otherwise is not protecting your child. They are protecting their own need to possess what they love. Your child is not a possession. Your child is a person, and persons deserve rooms that are theirs. Safe, private, unwatched. I want to tell you what the night after we found the camera was like. Tyler had gone to his mother's house that morning, retrieved the device, had the confrontation, come home. The whole day had been lawyer calls and texts from relatives who somehow already knew something had happened and were offering opinions we had not asked for. By 9 that night, Harper was asleep and Tyler and I sat in the living room and did not speak for a long time. Not because we had nothing to say, but because everything that needed saying was too large to start. Finally I said, "Are you okay?" He said no. I said, "Me either." He said, "I feel like I do not know who my mother is." I said, "I think she is still the person you knew. I think she just also has this part that she keeps hidden, and now you have seen it." He said, "How do you forgive someone for watching your family in secret?" I said, "I do not know yet." I said, "I think we start with what we require from her going forward, and we see if she can give it, and then we decide what forgiveness looks like from there." He said, "What if she cannot give it?" I said, "Then we have our answer, and we act accordingly." He put his head back against the couch and stared at the ceiling. He said, "She hummed my song." I said, "I know." He said, "She heard me singing to Harper every night, and she kept it, like she had been there." I said, "She wanted to be there. That is the whole problem. She wanted to be there so badly that she made herself there in the only way she could without us knowing." He said, "That is not love." I said, "I agree." We sat with that for a while. Then Harper made a small sound through the monitor. Not crying, just a shift. We both looked at the monitor on the table. The monitor we had bought ourselves. The monitor whose app was registered to my email. We looked at each other. Then Tyler started to laugh. A tired, helpless, slightly unhinged laugh. I started laughing too. Because what else do you do at 9 at night after the worst day you have had in years, when your daughter makes a small sound and you both look at the monitor like it might betray you? You laugh. You hold on to each other. You remember that you are still here, and she is still here, and you are still the ones in this room watching over her. Not anyone else. You. That is the thing Diane never understood. We did not need her watching. We were always watching. We have always been watching. We do not need anyone else's eyes in the dark. We have our own.